On April 9th, while defending Kastal, Abd al-Qadir al-Husayni was killed in battle. His death so demoralized his troops that all the other villages in the greater Jerusalem area swiftly fell into the hands of the Jewish forces. One by one, they were surrounded, attacked, and occupied, their people expelled, and their homes and buildings demolished. In some of them, the expulsion was accompanied by massacres, the most notorious of which is the one Jewish troops perpetrated on the same day Kastal fell in Deir Yassin. The systematic nature of Plan Dalet is manifested in Deir Yassin, a pastoral and cordial village that had reached a non-aggression pact with the Haganah in Jerusalem, but was doomed to be wiped out because it was within the areas designated in Plan Dalet to be cleansed. Because of the prior agreement they had signed with the village, the Haganah decided to send the Irgun and Sterngang troops so as to absolve themselves from any official accountability. In the subsequent cleansing of friendly villages, even this ploy would no longer be deemed necessary. On 9 April 1948, Jewish forces occupied the village of Deir Yassin. It lay on a hill west of Jerusalem, 800 meters above sea level, and close to the Jewish neighborhood of Givat Saul. The old village school serves today as a mental hospital for the Western Jewish neighborhood that expanded over the destroyed village. As they burst into the village, the Jewish soldiers sprayed the houses with machine gun fire, killing many of the inhabitants. The remaining villagers were then gathered in one place and murdered in cold blood, their bodies abused, while a number of the women were raped and then killed. Fahim Zaidan, who was 12 years old at the time, recalled how he saw his family murdered in front of his eyes. They took us out one after the other, shot an old man, and when one of his daughters cried, she was shot too. Then they called my brother Muhammad and shot him in front of us. And when my mother yelled, bending over him, carrying my little sister Hudra in her hands, still breastfeeding her, they shot her too. Zaidan himself was shot too. While standing in a row of children, the Jewish soldiers had lined up against a wall, which they had then sprayed with bullets, just for the fun of it, before they left. He was lucky to survive his wounds. Recent research has brought down the accepted number of people massacred at Deir Yassin from 170 to 93. Of course, apart from the victims of the massacre itself, dozens of others were killed in the fighting and hence were not included in the official list of victims. However, as the Jewish forces regarded any Palestinian village as an enemy military base, the distinction between massacring people and killing them in battle was slight. One only has to be told that 30 babies were among the slaughtered in Deir Yassin to understand why the whole quantitative exercise, which the Israelis repeated as recently as April 2002 in the massacre of Jenin, is insignificant. At the time, the Jewish leadership proudly announced a high number of victims so as to make Deir Yassin the epicenter of the catastrophe, a warning to all Palestinians that a similar fate awaited them if they refused to abandon their homes and take flight. Four nearby villages were next: Kalunya, Saris, Beit Surik, and Bidu. Taking only an hour or so in each village, the Haganah units blew up the houses and expelled the people. Interestingly, or ironically if you wish, Haganah officers claimed they had to struggle with their subordinates in order to prevent a frenzy of looting at the end of each occupation. Ben Ari, who supervised the sappers unit that blew up the houses, recounts in his memoirs how he had single-handedly stopped the plunder of these villages, but this claim seems exaggerated to say the least, given that the peasants ran away with nothing while their possessions found their way into the living rooms and farms of both soldiers and officers as wartime mementos. Two villages in the same area were spared, Abu Ghosh and Nabi Samuil. This was because their Mukhtars had developed a relatively cordial relationship with the local commanders of the Stern Gang. Ironically, this saved them from destruction and expulsion. As the Haganah wanted to demolish them, the more extremist group, the Stern Gang, now came to their rescue. This was, however, a rare exception, and hundreds of villages suffered the same fate as Galunya and the Castal.